Motivation. And when you now think, yeah, I had that back in the days, that is probably not what we want to have. However, we are just past the Zukunft Personal future staffing, which is the largest European HR and recruiting fair. It's less about HR, it's more about recruiting, how to win talent, actually develop this talent, and keep them in your organization without making them change employers or move on. And the question now is, how do you actually do that? And I was rather shocked to see how many leaders either professionally demotivate, which unfortunately was happening in most cases, and the very few examples of where leaders actually motivated their people. And I'm talking about their people who are doing exactly what we focus on at the moment, meaning to develop staff or to keep staff or to retain staff or to win staff, win talent for your organization. And these are people working in recruiting and HR. Sometimes in smaller organizations, they simply do both at the same time. So we are going to talk about exactly that, how leaders sometimes either motivate or demotivate their people. And the question is, how can this happen? How did we get here? The main issue here is, especially when we talk about recruiting and HR, that often people do, especially larger, smaller organizations, they often do both at the same time. And that, of course, is not a great thing, sometimes can't be avoided. However, often they are massively underappreciated. When we talk about how to motivate or demotivate, the first thing we need to talk about what is the situation in which we are. Because there's a massively wrong perception. People now say, oh, we are getting back to an employer's market. The job market is pretty dire. So we have the opportunity to choose who we want to hire, and we have the opportunity to turn people down. So there must be lots of choice. And that's the wrong thinking. What you refer to is the job market for employers, the employer's job market before COVID and before the pandemic and before remote work fully took off. What happened then was that often people had regional limitations, especially when you live in regions with not many employers there. When you wanted to have a different job, it often meant that you have to drive a long way, or you simply have to find something which is well connected with public transport, often not existed in certain areas. And then you say, well, I'll just stay with my employer because there's nothing else available. That's not the case today. You're competing with anyone that has an internet access. Any company which has access to the internet, which surprisingly is any company really in your organization, can now compete. I give you a very, very easy approach here. When we talk about the job simply is that you find the right people. And for example, in Switzerland, what we do in Switzerland is we advertise jobs in Germany and Austria, where many German speaking people live, or in France and Spain, where you have the same. And we offer, compared to which part of the country you're in, 30 to 100% more salary. And even when you have to tax it locally when you live there, it simply means still having doubled the salary definitely is more net income. And then you say, yeah, but we are used to have we just used to have this employers market where we can choose who we want to hire. Isn't that coming back? No, absolutely clearly not. When we talk about the job, and often people say, yeah, when you work in HR, it's often underappreciated in recruiting as well. And that's part of the job. If you want to have appreciation, usually that's what people in sales get. And you're not doing sales. Massive misperception. If you have talents approaching your organization saying, I think I could work for you, or people who are in your organization and think, should I change and move on, or should I stay in the organization? What happens to make it with a positive to make a positive outcome happen is a sales process. Recruiters who talk to talents who often can choose where to work, especially when they are well qualified, these people simply say, look, I simply want to have the best choice for me. And then your HR and your recruiting people are the ones who do the sales process here. It is a sales process, so there's no reason not to appreciate them. However, often, especially HR, is way too operative. You work payroll, you do any kind of conflict negotiation, you do any kind of complaints, you do any kind of planning what the next training session is. You do all of that on operational level. But when someone says, what's the employer brand? How do you want to develop the employer brand? How do you want to get recruiting out there? How do you want to find talent? How do you want to get outreach? How do you want to get the brand known in the market or the region at least? Then usually people often say, yeah, it's difficult, isn't it? We just don't have the time. And that's exactly the issue you have at the moment in this job. The demands compared to the reality shows a massive gap. There are high expectations with low appreciation, and at the same time, you wonder why people say, I don't think I want to work in HR or recruiting. It's just not for me. Rather more recruiting, often because of commissions when you close certain talents and they start working with you. But often HR people say it's basically an office job, 9 to 5, where you just do paperwork, isn't it? And unfortunately, especially in the English speaking world, that is not wrong. The reality often is that people say it's not an attractive job. And it's not an attractive job due to what you need to do. It's often not an attractive job due to how leaders deal with that job. And you need to change that first. But let's get to what I really saw on that expo, on that fair, Zukunft Personal, Future Staffing, Future HR in Cologne last week. Largest expo, Xing, the competitor, well, not really competitor anymore. They do recruiting only now. They don't do social. Xing is still the largest German recruiting brand and network. So when you're looking there, that's the place to be. They had a massive, massive presence and, of course, put their name on the whole expo. Well done for that. However, I looked around with lots of organizations where people from HR or recruiting were there to polish their brand and get their brand out there. And at a certain booth, mid-sized company, two-digit amount of employees, there were leaders who really, I have to say, professionally demotivate people. But it happened not only there, it happened on many booths. And the first thing that is not really great is wrong KPIs. And one KPI which I often hear is how many applicants did we get on the job? If you say that how many applicants we got on the job is a relevant KPI, I have bad news for you. It's not. Because if you want to have as many applicants as possible, when you consider more is better, then simply put a job advert out there saying, we offer some piece of work and we pay 1 million a month. Then you will have 1 million applications in an instant. I mean, no one will fit on the job, but you have lots of applications coming in. The KPI just saying how many did come in doesn't give you any clue. The best job ad, the best job campaign is not the one where you get most applicants. The best campaign is where you only get people applying who fit for the job, not the ones who say, yeah, IT, yeah, I have a computer at home and yeah, I do stuff on that computer, you know. I'm not an expert in how do you call it? Exchange? Never heard of that. And SQL? It's SQL. Yeah, no, never heard of it. But, you know, I'm a quick learner. Also, I have Excel at home, and, you know, this is all somehow the same, isn't it? It's not. However, you often have certain applicants who think they can do everything as long as you pay them, and of course, they are not up to the job. When you have KPIs, you need to have KPIs that are relevant. So, for example, what's the percentage of people fitting for the job? How many were still there when it comes to stage one and in invitation to the interview? Stage two, doing the phone interview. Stage three, if needed, do the interview on site. How many got an offer? How many signed the offer? How many showed up for the job? These are KPIs in percentages, just to give you a very tiny, tiny amount of KPIs here that are actually relevant. But saying something like, when you contact more, you get more outcome. Another KPI that I heard. One leader told me, the more people we proactively and active recruiting and active sourcing, the more people we contact, the better it will be. That's pure nonsense. You only force your people to contact non-fitting candidates and force them to do applications which are pointless from the beginning. And people will, of course, then just contact another 100 people on LinkedIn and they will say, that's not for me. And your employer brand will have a massive damage. So stick with scientifically sound KPIs that actually make sense. And the next aspect is you need to focus on the right thing. When you tell people the only focus you have is operational level work, you shouldn't be surprised that people, after they got a certain level of experience, simply move on. No one wants to work only operational. The focus often is that people in HR and recruiting say, yeah, I have to do all the interviews, and I have to do all the documentation of that, and I have to do all the paperwork, and we have to do payroll, and we have to do paid vacation and annual leave, and we have to do the next training session, organize it, and book hotels, and book meeting rooms, and book meetings internally, and everything we do internally, and all the complaints that we have, and everything of conflict negotiation and alternative dispute resolution, and. And as soon as someone says, how do you work strategically? How do you do employer branding? How do you get the brand out there? How do you get a campaign out there? How do you get outreach into the job market? How do you get known in networks that can actually refer you suitable candidates? And then they say, yeah, we just don't have the time, you know. We don't have the time. When you put the right focus in there as a leader, you motivate people because they have a job where they say some tasks I like more, some tasks I like less, and that's always part of a job that you have tasks you like more or less. Let's face it, no one says, oh, finally, travel expenditure needs to be documented, my favorite task of the week. Travel expenses is hardly anyone's. I would almost claim no one's favorite task of the week, but still it needs to be done. By the way, with AI tools, way better. Focus is important. And I often saw people who focus simply on the wrong aspect. They focus on getting operational stuff done. And of course, operational stuff needs to be done, but not as the only thing you have. You need more than just operational work done, tick the box and move on. And also, leaders need to be present and not only show up when they have something to criticize. Calling it feedback, by the way, doesn't make it any better. People very quickly figure out when you only show up to have criticism. And on top of that, and I give you a real world example that happened just a couple of days ago on site there in Cologne. I was at this expo at this fair for delivering 10 speeches in 3 days. I had more than 40 appointments in 3 days. So it was a rather intense 3 days, I can tell you. The path goal aspect of it is of crucial importance. In one company where they said, we set a certain goal for the fair, for the expo, we have a special thing that we offer. It's a 30% discount on our recruiting activities, which we do for companies. And then, of course, they had a goal. And the sales leader gets to the owner of the business. You call it owner, managing director, CEO, whatever it is, and says, look, we've already have 500,000 in business in 3 days because this whole special offer was limited to 30th of November, but can be extended to 15th of December. So it's rather from the moment I record this, pretty much 3 months from now. And the owner of the business said, yeah, you have 500,000, but we agreed on 1 million. And I see the utter demotivation happening instantly. So of course I need to do background check, not judge quickly, and ask, was it agreed to have 1 million on the expo? And then I find out, by the way, that's what this business owner said. They said, no, 1 million till the end of the activity. So 1 million until basically the last date is 15th of December. So let's face it, people did 50% of the path. 50% of the way was already agreed, signed, ticked off the box, done. The path is walked down, 50% achievement in 3 days. You have 87 days left for the other 50%. I have a projection. I think they're going to make it. But when you say, hey, just 50% after 3 days, we agreed on 1 million in 90 days, so why are you not having the 1 million after 3 days then? That is how you demotivate people professionally. When you say there are a million things out there and you have 1 year time and people do 900,000 in 3 days and you say, yeah, but we agreed on 1 million, then you do not understand basic 101 leadership motivation. And of course, it was massively demotivating. Just a couple of days later, now I received via LinkedIn because I got in touch with all the people because they were really lovely, actually, also very professional, very driven, really loved to work there. But one person now said that this was the moment why they now apply for jobs in other companies. And that is, again, another talent lost due to leadership action. The question now is, how do you implement better leadership to actually motivate people in recruiting and HR and probably anywhere else? And step number one always is you need to be able to learn leadership. When you think that leadership just happens, you are wildly wrong. When I would ask you, what do you think? What's the percentage of people who had 0 minutes of leadership training or coaching? 0. They just became leaders either by coincidence or no one invested in them. Because this is backed by the Chartered Management Institute study, 82% of all leaders, 82% of all leaders had 0 minutes of leadership training, coaching, or whatever else. And then you wonder that things are going wrong. Just imagine when you are a mid-sized machine construction business and I show up at your doorstep saying something like, yeah, I know you do something with IT and machines. I never had vocational training on that or did uni. I just don't like that, But I like machines. I have a car at home. That's a machine. And I have a coffee machine, also a machine. So where's my job? Can you offer me a job? And of course, your answer would be, bit of more substantiation might be very nice. What about having some vocational training, get some certificates, get some training, go to uni or whatever else of the things that I told you before. And with leadership, people are just like, yeah, didn't have any training, no problem, just go. It's just humans, learning by doing. What could possibly go wrong? You need to learn leadership with professional training, leadership coaching, mentoring, whatever else, many options out there. You need to learn leadership. Anything else is going to be the most expensive choice. The number one reason why people still stay or leave is leadership behavior. You can see it on Kununu, which is the German version, or Glassdoor, which is the international version. People complain about leadership behavior all the time. And of course, you can say they are all complainers. That's not very likely. Some of them might be complainers, many of them are not. Many of them are not. Very important here is that you give them professional leadership training, because what you train with it as well is you're training trust. As soon as people know what they do, immediately people perceive our leader now is a lot more structured. They are a lot more predictable. They are a lot more reliable in what they do. And that's what immediately drives people's trust. When you think trust happens automatically, here are the news, it does not. Unfortunately, people often do not have an awareness about leadership and the issues there, because absolute awareness needs to be happen. Leadership is the number one reason why people stay or leave, why they are motivated or demotivated, why they do their job or don't do their job, why they love their job or they hate their job, if they go the extra mile or if they do 9 to 5, not a single minute longer than they are legally obliged to according to their working contract. This absolute awareness needs to be there. Bad leadership is always a bad result. First, you lose talents or you don't even win them. You can't retain them. You can't keep them in your organization. They are moving on quickly and you wonder why this happened. It is extremely important that you are the one who knows about what makes great leadership. Because great leadership means you know how to motivate people professionally. You know the tools to motivate them. You know the scientific backing of motivation. And as soon as you do that, everything will be a lot better from there. So if you implement it the way we just talked about, everything will become better and you motivate instead of demotivate your people in recruiting, HR, and beyond. And I wish you all the best doing so. And when you now say, that sounds like a bit of work, I have about 48 different aspects to talk about right now. Feel free to contact me. So first, when you're now watching me on YouTube, feel free to leave a like there or subscribe to my channel. Feel free to comment, of course. I'm looking forward to future discussions here. When you are listening on Apple Podcasts or Spotify, feel free to leave a review. I'm looking forward to hearing from you there as well. And of course, recommend this channel, either Apple Podcast, Spotify, or the YouTube channel, on any channel available, social media, colleagues, friends, anywhere. Any recommendation is welcome. Thank you very much for doing so as well. One aspect which we only have on YouTube is the leadership tips. Leadership tips, called YouTube Shorts, as the name implies, only available on YouTube. So these YouTube leadership tips is something which we publish multiple times per week. We have more than 100 already out there, all for free here. So feel free to not only subscribe to the channel, but also put the little alarm bell there so you do not miss out on any video that we produce in the future. In addition, of course, you can follow me on Apple Podcasts and Spotify, or just go to my website, nb-networks.biz, so you know what I do for a living. If you now say, I need to discuss something, but I can't do it in public. It's too specific to my organization. It needs to stay fully anonymous. And of course, you can do that. Everything that is texted to me, even this episode happened because of emails I received on the matter. Everything stays anonymous and fully confidential. That goes without saying. nb@nb-networks.com is my email address. I'm looking forward to hearing from you there. If you now say, do we have live sessions? Yes, we do. However, we only communicate them via the leadership letter. When you go to expert.nb-networks.com, you can sign up there, put your email address in there, and you only receive one email every Wednesday morning. No worries, it's 100% content, ad-free guarantee. And what you find in there is full access to all the articles in the English and German language, more than 400 in each language, no paywall, no nothing, free access via the expert letter. Others you will find with paywall on the internet. This is the approach where you find everything with no paywall. Same applies to the podcast, more than 400. So the second thing you get is more than 400 episodes in the English and German language of this podcast. And the videocast, pretty new the last couple of months. This is slowly and steadily growing. So thank you very much for joining here. And yeah, sign up for the newsletter because we have lots of perks which are only available in there. And of course, you can follow me on social media, LinkedIn, Instagram, Facebook, and YouTube. And of course, Xing, if you're German speaking, you can do that as well. The most important aspect will always be the last one I mentioned. Apply what you have and heard in this podcast, because only when you apply what you heard, you will see the positive aspect that you obviously want to see. Because when you're now sitting there and saying, I want to change something, and I'm going to send Niels an email. By the way, if you have something very specific, you want training, speaking, coaching, mentoring for your event, or project interim management, feel free to text me. We will find something for absolutely anything. But you can, of course, also contact me when you just have a question, like to have a chat. All of that is available. When you now say, I'm going to contact him, that means you want to do something better. That means you want to have positive change. And that means you want to have better organizations compared to where you are right now. I'm happy to help you anytime. Contact me anytime, answering every single message within 24 hours or less. So I'm looking forward to hearing from you there. And at the end of this podcast, as well as the end of this videocast, there's only one thing left for me to say. Thank you very much for your time.